Welcome back to HGC, where Tempo Storm is one game away from having a smooth sailing victory over Even in Death in their first series of Phase 2.
It's a nice start for them, especially coming off of MSB, to go into Even in Death. But, you know, again, it comes down to, I'm having a hard time honestly gauging this entire thing. We haven't seen enough of Even in Death for me to be like, you know, is this good of Tempo to be as dominant as they are? Is it not good? Either way, we've got Game 3, and Even in Death has still a long way to come if they're going to be able to take the game here over Tempo.
Still figuring out Even in Death's place in all of this, figuring out their style, what battlegrounds they love, what heroes are their favorites, whether or not they're going to be more consistent with first pick or battleground pick after losses. And we can at least check in on that right now with the battleground pool and see if they chose first pick. And they didn't. So this is something that they did versus Team Freedom 2, which is just vary things up. It didn't work for them to pick first pick before. Now they're going to get second pick and the battleground.
Can you give me what Even in Death picked maps-wise the first series we saw from them?
I sure can.
Because
they picked Tomb of the Spider Queen. The first game, well, they only picked one map because they were not the home team, so Team Freedom picked the first battleground.
I knew that they picked Tomb. I thought for some reason that they had picked a secondary map. The only reason I asked is because now that is the 3 maps they picked are all small maps. So it shows already that they at least view the strength of this team as into smaller maps with their rotations, which can understand because of how they drafted on Tomb. Heavy commitment into just raw resources around the map overall, but it also sacrificed so much into the team fight that they didn't really have an opportunity to win those late game team fights. Do we see the same error here for them? Because, hey, especially in the open division, I mean, if you draft according to the map, that is a huge strength for you. But you might be able to neglect too much in the team fight where a team like Tempo just goes, nope, not today.
Well, we know that Even in Death feels like their macro game is what is lacking. So if they go to a small battleground, the lanes are, I guess, more forgiving at least, that they're closer together. You can make faster rotations.
That's actually, yeah, it's really interesting. I even had this conversation a little bit with Fan at the midseason brawl about just what does the word macro actually mean? Everybody's kind of got a bit of their own intent of it, because I view it as big maps are naturally their macro focus, but small maps can still be that, right?
Yes.
Like for me, I view Dragonshire and Tomb as a macro map, even though it is very small. But yeah, the members of Even in Death not wanting to deal with it, it just shows that they do view their rotations, at least between their 1-4s or their 2-1-2s, as they displayed on Tomb and the Spider Queen twice even. That they're comfortable with.
Well, there's macro game on every single battleground, definitely.
Yeah.
But when you are farther away and you don't have globals, then it would seem to be more unforgiving in how the kinds of rotations you make. Whereas if the lanes are closer together, someone can respond if something hits the fan.
If you done goofed, one member dead, the rotation to make sure no experience loss is a lot easier.
Right.
On some of those maps. That's where Even in Death continues to take us here. Where are they going to go into the bans? Tassadar is being hovered. It's a sad day, man. I was just hoping he was gone forever. I understand why he's still here with the buff that we saw recently onto his shielding at 4, but I just felt like I could have done an extra week of HGC without Tassadar being relevant in a draft.
He's more so here than at the midseason brawl. He was at the midseason brawl.
Yeah, he was, but not nearly as bad as he is here.
Not as much. So this seems to be a little bit of column A, a little bit of NA being like, nope, column B is no. Oh, but there you go. Genji's still scarier.
Genji's, you know, still a big fear. You know, looking at Genji, I talk about small maps and how, you know, macro maps, things like that, how he struggles. Of all those maps, this is my favorite for him. Dragonshire. It's like essentially a good version of Zeratul is how I view his playstyle. What do you...
And we all know how you feel about Zeratul and Dragonshire.
Yeah, love Zeratul on Dragonshire. Absolutely such a creative and unique way to approach the laning phase of this tried and true longest standing map almost in the entire game. And it feels like still to this day.
Do I detect a hint of sarcasm?
Yeah, no. Yeah, there's a lot there. Tempo. It's got to be the Anuber to the Haka. Which one? Do they want the 1v1 or do they not? I think
it's the Haka.
I like the Haka over the Anub as well. I think it brings too much value here, but they're going deep. 5 more seconds.
Last time they were first pick in Band Uther, they got Malfurion. A noob.
Wow, they're going to commit to the Anub.
Adds a lot in the rotations because of all the CC he has by himself.
Yeah, it turns out Anubarak's not only a great initiator.
He's a great follow-up.
Yeah, the Cocoon's pretty dope, especially since the coding changes that changed it to not be a full reset when dodged, going to the 10-second, a soft reset. And the soft reset, it's so impactful. Always. It literally almost never can be dodged there. So now with Even in Death, they have the Mouth, they have the Dahaka. What are we going to see out of these next two? I want to see... Man, what is it? What do you think here? I don't want the Holy Trinity of any kind. I don't want to venture in that avenue whatsoever.
Why not?
It is optimal, but I'm over it. I just don't want to see it out of tempo. That's how I feel about it there. It's just like...
It was so last week.
It was so last game, last week. MSB, whatever.
If not that, then maybe Greymane.
I would like a Greymane.
Arthas.
Okay. And that makes sense to prioritize Arthas at high. Again, the Dahaka. If you aren't going to go into Illidan, I do think that Arthas is always going to be the next best into that 1v1. And on a map like a small map like this, yeah, prioritize the Arthas high. That's a nice even rotation here. Again, whether or not it's most optimal, I don't know. It's just more, I didn't want to see Tempo run, you know, the old Ariel Vala. I'm allowed to have some requests, right? For my own entertainment value. You know, I think there's a certain leeway after enough games.
You are allowed, and they're also allowed not to listen to you.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. They, you know, sometimes they listen too much and sometimes too little, I feel like here. Even in Death, what do you think? What's the most optimal ban?
I'm thinking they're going to ban a support. If they don't want Li Ming, it feels like Tempo's headed toward Li Ming as well. There's that Alarak again.
A sneaky snake. He just shows up on these small maps.
Are you a snake?
With no ETC even being a realistic option for the drop to tempo, that is not even in Death banning that out of fear of the ETC duo. That used to be the fear. Now it's just with the Anubarak was the only consistent variable, showing that it's no longer ETC is the only duo. We have it now confirmed with that ban on the side of Even in Death. What about on the side of Tempo?
Some sort of damage dealer.
We've seen Even in Death try and run 2-1-2s. Every time that there's been a heavy pick comp on the side of Tempo, they don't have two heavy picks right now. It's a very traditional laning phase.
So Tempo, in fact, did not want Li Ming for themselves or for Even in Death.
Yeah, nice to be able to remove the Disintegrate option for the Cocoon.
Stitches Kael'thas.
Like, I see where you're coming from.
I think that, well, but
I'd just rather not. I'd just rather not, you know?
Just thinking for the wave clear, the rotations, the picks. You've got Malfurion already.
Like, hit me, just get a little weird with it. Just this much. I don't need like an Murky, but not Stitches Kael'thas.
All right.
What that it looks like,
I've got you.
All right, what do you hit me with it?
You take Probius. I'm just writing down the picks.
I take the Probius more. The reason why I don't want this specifically is when looking at the argument of the most forgiving composition is always the best. I had a hard time rooting for this every time Dig even picks it. It isn't the safest way to play the video game. And don't get me wrong, when you're as good at this strategy as Dignitas, it makes sense why you can play it so high up into the bracket. But that's the thing, like, you have to play it almost as good as, like, legitimately, has all the same flaws. Not all the same flaws, they aren't as drastic, but it's essentially picking a Tronda composition, is what you're doing. I need these things to line up, I have to execute, or I struggle. The biggest benefit is that you don't just suck in wave clear, because you at least have Kael'thas, you at least have other resources, and you didn't sacrifice a support or assassin role for Tron to enter Mark. But that is why I always just have such a hard time. It's not a bad comp, but you have to be near perfect execution, and we're asking that of Even in Death.
I believe.
Gilly's got the faith. Another Tassadar, no hyper carry, and with an Arthas. Second time in North America.
Icy Talons.
Maybe. I think it depends on the front line. So Stitches all day. I take Icy Talons. Dahaka's a little bit scarier. Icebound Fortitude can make it convenient, but with you have the Tassadar, yeah, might as well. I would go for it. Go Icy Talons Hyper Carry build.
There are a few times that we've seen NA teams in particular, and I think it was World 20 at Midseason Brawl, get tasked with Greymane.
Yeah, tasked with Greymane used to be like, it's nice. Anytime you have a melee with the task, it's just not, it's not as hyper focused on, you know, enabling one person to carry to where I feel like it's just like a, yo, yeah, anytime you have melees, you know, it's going to be able to pay off. Is it so much so that it's kind of its own thing? Still yet to see if that's the argument. Because I would actually say, I personally think the Arthas would be more of a hyper carry in that circumstance than it would, especially if they move into Icy Talons. Like when rework Arthas actually happened and I saw Icy Talons in the Rune Tap build, I was just like, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever done in my entire life. But then you were like, oh man, if I have any CC, I can't do anything. So now that CC-less warriors, or not CC-less, how do I say this? Their actual cooldowns for their CC are so long that it's unreasonable to burn it on just the Arthas unless you're 100 to 0ing them. It suddenly makes that build a lot better. And again, if you give the bonus healing, I watched the Diablo go from almost 0 HP to 100, it feels like, with one Tassadar shield, his bonus healing, and then one auto attack with the level 4. Arthas with Rune Tap and Icy Talons on top of it, that's got to be even grosser, right?
I know you like Icy Talons because it gives you the attack speed to make Rune Tap give you just your whole health back, but is there any way that you could take Icy Talons and Icebound Fortitude? Because I feel like we've seen that before.
You can. You technically can, right? With the Tassadar shield, give you the bonus healing, then increasing your auto attack speed. It just goes, is that too little of burst sustain, you know, long over the time? How many resources have to commit to the Arthas? What's his role? And if your whole goal is like enable him, ignore the Greymane, it can work out. But if you have to help the Greymane, it's maybe too many resources onto the Arthas.
I got it. I figured it out.
Okay.
You just give him even more attack speed. Rainer, Inspire, let's go. All right, we're actually getting into the game. Game number 3, can Even in Death take a game off of Tempo Storm? We find out right now.
I just find it amazing, like, that your brain, when you're going, like, we need to give them more auto attack speed, who do we pick here? You're like, drop the old Jimmy. We're going to throw Jimmy.
Or Adrenal Overload.
I feel like Bloodlust. Like, it's the first thing that goes in my mind. There's, like, Bloodlust. Lame.
Why not have Jimmy?
I mean, Jimmy's a classic. I'll give you that much. He's in every tutorial game. I mean, he's got a lot of involvement rate in tutorials, at least.
It's true, 100%.
Man, he's just miles out. Already an adjustment-ish. Looking at the level 1 for Lunara.
Cruel Spores.
Gonna focus on better mana control when it comes to her wave clear. Kilthos is not taking anything. I expect that to be mana addict 100%. He agrees, locks it in. No flask at level 1 though for Greymane.
Wolfheart.
It's gonna be the Wolfheart. Is this Eyes in the Dark?
It's the time is up. The time is now. If he's in Worgen build all of the time, then he gets that increased damage from that. He has the armor, and then he's got the pairing with Tassadar.
Into really squishy backlines and into, again, one of those lacking CC frontliners that we see on the side of Even in Death. I absolutely love Eyes in the Dark. I am amazed at how heavy it fell off and just never even got kind of picked up. So I hope we see that kind of build here from Tempo Storm.
Well, the change that came in, giving half of it to baseline of Inner Beast and then having the option seemed to be the nail in the coffin for it, but it's occasionally here and there when you want to signify going into further of a Worgen focus. First blood achieved from Tempo Storm, taking out Dahaka on the top.
Getting the gank up on top. That's something that, you know, Even in Death has to be expecting here. If they can't go blow for blow, then you have to go to your most vulnerable lane. And that 3-man rotation up to Tempo Storm is a bit too clean. And they end up getting the first kill here. The members of Even in Death, though, the rest of them, you see them doing a good job with their 4. Lutano's isolated. That little split right there, and Lutano having to move away and see Malphite's coming back down to be able to aid him out. That is the last thing you want to do anytime you're running a heavy 1-4. Always staying together is so important, because clearing a wave faster with 4 people and then rotating out is always better than just having the one kind of side soak, 3 slow clear, and then transition later.
Once again, want to point out that Fury is sitting on the solo warrior in the top lane. Speaking of the other warrior, Caterpillar in trouble. but has a burrow charge to escape all of the CCs. Arthas getting Eternal Hunger. So this is a stacking quest. The more you use Frostborn Hungers on a hero, then you get more mana. It increases the mana that it restores, as well as the damage.
No Icy Talons. We can go home now. It's okay. Game's over. No fun build on Arthas.
I don't know. If you have Eternal Hunger, I think he's going Frostborn Feeds at 16.
You're probably right.
Because that damage, stacks. The damage stacks indefinitely. The mana caps, but the damage you can stack for forever.
And not only that, then it works with, again, the opportunity to move into the life steal out of the level 4 on task, but he didn't take it.
Again, Call is light.
All of our theory, we actually know nothing. That is weird. The worst part, man. I gotta look more into this. There's a Tassadar phenomenon going on here in NA, but I still don't know what the logic and thought process is on when he is right, when he's wrong.
Twice we have seen Even in Death try to take someone out with their combo, and twice it has not worked. So I'm hoping to see the change, make sure that they are not feeling under pressure, this being the final game of the series. They did have Gravity Labs and Roots there, but Cattle, June, and Som find Frozen X caught in the middle lane, knowing that so many of Even in Death were in the bottom.
There we go look at this 1v1 matchup, man. The Arthas, again, I feel like it's going to be just only more and more common that we see this in NA. If it's not an Illidan map, you just take the Arthas into the Dahaka, try and pressure him out, because he's one of the few that can at least, make him respect his laning partner. Everybody else just kind of looks at Dahaka and goes, gross, please not my lane. Giants picked up for Even in Death. It's a nice window where they got some pressure out. Can they get a hook? The Cattle's not the target they want, but you see him intentionally using the Beetles and himself just to get those body blocks.
Wow, that baiting out with the burrow charge afterward. Now all of Even in Death on retreat from Tempo Storm. Som dove in. Psionic Storm secures the kill on Lunara. Battery in trouble. Howling Blast connects. In goes Cattle, blowing up Stitches.
So much damage there from Tempo Storm, and a lot of that was enabling coming out from Fury. Nice root and Gravity Lapse. Tassadar shield down. No fear here from Tempo Storm. 4 kills already here. No Dragonite been obtained. And Gilly, normally Dragonshire goes pretty long here in North America, but Tempo has gotten so many kills so early on that I feel like they're going to be able to shut this game down pretty quickly. Yeah,
I would agree with that. They haven't been able to get a Dragon Knight yet, but it is only a matter of time because they already have a level lead, more than a level advantage over Even in Death. And this early on, that's pretty impressive.
Fury is going to gain control here. Tassadar and Malfurion 1v1. Tass can stall very, very long period of time. So if he goes down here, it's such a good bully to be Tassadar. He's just as like, I can hang out on this and take free trades with my shields, drop an E if things get hairy, but nobody for Tempo Storm applying the pressure through mid. They're going to stall out and wait for the 10 mark, and that's where they decide to execute.
Yeah, a lot of the core of Even in Death, yes, Malfurion was down in Kael'thas, but there was still Stitches to be able to maybe get a hook, and with Tempo Storm spread out, they're just waiting until they can get heroic abilities, because then it's the guarantee without risking anything at this point, knowing that they're so close to having heroics, and then Even in Death just has to back off. June?
Taps well, that Moonburner hit, Moonfire. That could have been a dead June, but now the well will be able to out-stat the numbers there onto the damage, especially with the Feral Heart picked up. With level 10, this should be a Dragonite for Tempo Storm. They should be a fort, too, with how much experience advantage they have. They have the Giant split pressuring out, too. I mean, Even in Death just has to try and not get caught. That's the only thing they can do right now. It's all about experience and catching up. But this here rotation from Tempo Storm shows that they are going to try and enable these Giants for a very long period of time. And they're already dead. That just was a waste of time here and maybe a lack of focus onto forts here for Tempo Storm. They're just going to go for another front wall.
They're going for front walls. They have Arthas still up in the top, who took out Dahaka along with Caterpillar. So the split push remains a possibility for Tempo Storm thanks to that kill.
Shout out to Tempo for getting that flank up into top too. That was not the direction you typically see it. Normally it's a cycle of the DK up into top with the emphasis of pressure on the bottom. But I mean, Catching your opponent off guard, getting a kill, can never frown on that. Very well done. The Dragon Knight didn't gain too much, but as long as the pressure up on top is going to be appropriate. Nah, man. This is a little too little to be gained by Tempo Storm. That very much should have been a minimum of 1 fort. And the fact that nobody stayed up on top to secure that fort, it's going to stall it out. Tempo Storm giving more windows of hooks over to Even in Death. Talking about hooks.
Hook. Roots after. Gravity Labs. Cocoon. Wild Cattle. Burrow charges away.
Knights were started for Tempo Storm. Both of them, actually. Tempo was literally just spreading the resources, gaining everything, while the 4 members of Even in Death siege up here.
Now, it's the benefit of Tempo Storm's composition that they have both Greymane and then Rhaegar as a support who can solo a camp.
Yeah, he's pretty dope in that department. One of the only supports that can get away with that type of stuff. Every night camp, everything. It's, you feel really useful when you can be that guy and be like, nah, I got the camp, don't worry.
Don't worry, fam. Level 13 here, Earth Shield's gonna be a big help. Immediately, Tempo Storm get that 13 and go for the fight. Curse Bullet used, Twilight Dream off the back. There's gonna be the hook though. Ancestral Healing barely connects to keep Cattle alive, but he's not out of it yet. He's still taking a lot of damage. So has Fury, but he has his ghouls out to try to heal back up.
There we see the turn and the damage coming out from the Archon. Cattle falls very, very low. Look at Homicidal. Too much damage output, and that is gonna be a pick on the Caterpillar. Frozen X is revealed here now out of the cocoon. No mana remaining. Gravity Lapse is going to be a whiff. Dimensional Shift, and now this is 1 for 1. Tempo Storm had a really clean turn, but then it was still enough for Even in Death to at least get a pick off.
Between Kael'thas and Lunara, the area damage that they can put out, Splintered Spear too, and Living Bomb, it's a lot. They even have Thornwood Vine. It doesn't have Leaping Strike though, so Even in Death are sort of limited in how they can make sure to actually execute. But Battery showed us that if it's waiting until people are low, then he throws out the hook and they have the roots underneath. Then they've brought somebody back in with enough time maybe to be able to take them out.
We have ourselves the next Dragon Eye phase. Top altar is going to be matched up. Tempo Storm has bottom. So can they get in mid here with the Giants pressured out? 13 is going to be here for Even in Death, but they're not committing too many resources to either one of the lanes. Tempo actually cycling the pressure through bottom. Here's the collapse.
Dahaka's coming into Future Trial being set. Frozen X in a lot of trouble, and Psalm just obliterates that Lunara. Twilight Dream hits many of the members of Tempo Storm and pulls June back into the fight. He goes into Wolf Run.
He actually has to heal himself. He does drop the heal and the shielding with his 13 there to make sure he stays alive. Dragon Knight, Fury comes down. He's looking for a kick, trying to get in front of the members of Even in Death to be able to get that punt out. And now look at that root, no damage. Follow up, it's just poke, stall. 75% on the Dragon Knight. The fort is gonna go down now. Tempo Storm, they're just going to move forward onto the keep wall. I thought for sure they would cycle through mid and get a double fort. I would like to see them take the fort. I think it's worth more than the keep front wall. You see them second guessing it, and they're trying to figure out which one they're going to move for, but in fact the call is going to be the keep front wall.
Double Gravity Lapse hits. Tempo Storm staying spread out and back because of the Lunara and the Kael'thas damage, and of course the hooks from Stitches. The cycling's happening now for Tempo Storm heading up into the mid. Fury's slowing them down as the Dragon Knight.
He's going to dish out the kick. Should be fine. So there's like 2 routes there on whether or not you push through mid or onto bottom. The only variable that changes your decision making is if you're going to hit the 16 mark in time. So if Tempo had committed to that front wall and actually hit the 16 mark, it's better to push to the wall and then cycle using the 16 to gain mid fort. But because they weren't going to hit that window, again, they moved up. They got maybe 1 turret. They didn't get mid fort either. They find themselves in a position where this invade would have been 100% theirs, but now the distance to safety is actually pretty real for the members of Even in Death.
A lot of abilities used on either side. That's Cursed Bullet. Battery gets out. Twilight Dream hits. Fury healed up by Ancestral Healing, but Tassadar was killed, and Homicidal has caught another with Drag.
Psalm took too much damage there. He has to retreat. A nice Flask. Got some rebuttal damage out there. Keep in mind, that's not full Flask build here for Greymane, which, by the way, sometimes I feel like everything in this world is done just to prove it and be wrong. Every talent on that is non-Flask build. except for us in the target floor, is blast build. Oh my gosh! 16 here for Tempo. More Dragonite. Rotations, they have a huge advantage. It's all going to be, can Even in Death get more control onto the map? Can they cycle their pressure out? And can they get the 20 global Dahaka problem that you see so frequently here on Dragonshire?
You know, Dread, if it makes you feel any better, it also wasn't Frostborn feeds, even with Eternal Hunger.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, so they were like, what if we try out these talents, you know? Just a little bit different. They aren't the norm, but they aren't crazy. And then it's just like, we're going back to the normal build. This got a little too hairy.
I guess having a root off of Frozen Tempest when you've got somebody who does not want to be rooted out in the front like Stitches is pretty good.
Yeah, you know.
Pair that up with the Curse Bullet.
It's okay. It's decent.
And then Executioner paired with Arthas. Very good. But 16 is here too for Even in Death. Storm is not what it's called. Starwood's Spear is going to be nice for Lunara, giving her that range. She has been the target of Psalm diving in.
Rayman and Arthas are rotating down. Even in Death, you've got about 5 seconds before you realize this is a bad choice.
All right, Malfurion's there. Homicidals come from the side too. Battery's stuck inside of the cocoon, but he's out now. We start dropping the Putrid Bile. Twilight Dream.
Oh, but look at him. He's so very low. He's not going to survive. That's 1 for 1. No, but Lunara getting caught out. Cattle with a huge burrow charge here. The members of Even in Death, only 2 stand. Double Warrior. I don't think they've got the damage here, Gilly. That looks like this is going to be a 5-0 wipe.
Man, things looked so good for Even in Death, despite the fact that Malfurion got caught.
When I say nothing, I mean obviously 2.
Yep.
That's I just assumed 5-0 obviously means 5 for a 2 trade. I mean, clearly.
Your math is impeccable.
Yeah, you know, it's not my strong suit here. My forte.
But yeah, Even in Death have been putting up a fight in these team fights, and Tempo Storm recognizes that, and their strength, Even in Death's strength, is only growing with Lunara and with Kael'thas. These are getting tougher and tougher for Tempo Storm to win the fights, and especially for how well it started off positioning-wise, the fact that Malfurion had to burn not Twilight Dream, but Ice Block really early on, and Even in Death still were able to get those 2 kills.
The members of Even in Death should have tried to collapse onto that giant a little bit better. It's unrealistic to expect Tempo Storm anywhere other than channeling Dragonite or taking those giants, so you can't stop the interrupt onto the Dragonite, so you just go all in the giants if they're there. Look for that pick, like all in, no life that hero. And June was very susceptible, especially when we saw the slow there. So it was just, that's one of those things where it's like, that is an extremely experienced team to be able to make that type of call. It's very, you know, I'm not surprised that they aren't the ones making it, but their window is so tiny here. They're so far behind that they need to be trying to make drastic plays like that if they're going to be able to make a comeback.
They can right now. Anubarak is inside of the Dragonite. Psalm takes so much damage, gets dragged back in. Ancestral Healing's been used. A Twilight Dream hits so many of the members. Fury is low. They're trying to take him down, but he keeps healing himself back up, plus the heals from June. There's no Ancestral Healing left. Homicidal burrows just long enough for his healing to take shape. The Korra is falling, though, Dread, 80%.
80% and ticking here. Cattle is going to find himself revealed in a moment, but Psalm on the backside, he does end up dropping. Gilly, it is not over yet. 50%, the Dragonite Explosion, 30, 20. And even though the members of Tempo Storm are falling, it doesn't matter. Tempo's going to take the series 3-0.
Good core call for Tempo Storm, knowing they had the Dragonite, knowing the time, and being able to pull a lot of the members off from Even in Death, from defending their core. But Even in Death, I am pleasantly surprised of the fight they put in that last game. Yeah,
I'm still satisfied with what we saw from them. A diversity of strategies. Granted, you know, again, I would pull away a little bit from the Stitches Kael'thas. Like, that is a very dig thing on how clean they run it. It's hard for me to, you know, again, I told you, it's even hard when they pick it. I'm like, this isn't optimal, but you guys run it so clean, it might be the winning draft here. So it's hard, but at least they're trying. And they're venturing out of their comfort zone. So that is a huge thing for this. It's just, again, it's all about watching the VODs, looking at the reasoning, the thought process, what Tempo did, what you did, and how can you find ways to improve?
Speaking of venturing outside of your comfort zone, what did you think about the slight swap between Cattle and Fury?
I'm not sold yet. I like to see changes out of Tempo. I feel like they have been together too long, doing the same thing for too long, to where it's like something has to change, right? You're not going to get any better unless you make a major change. What if that is the right change, though? Still a skeptic.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to find out if they continue with that when they play versus Gale Force Esports next week. It's weird thinking about the fact that Tempo Storm versus Gale Force Esports already so soon after we've just started Phase 2. I wonder how scared or respectful of the roster Tempo Storm is of Gale Force Esports, knowing that there are these big names on there, but then again, they still are working and finding their synergy.
And also, like with Tempo, it's weird because, again, when they're in North America playing here at HGC, they seem to be they're definitely a better team than when they're at LAN. So it goes like, is Gale Force even a problem, at least when looking at the online event, or is it that LAN problem carry over online for the first time ever? Because again, we're seeing changes from Tempo, which means that something's different. It's just whether or not it's for better or for worse.
We've seen all of the teams now from North America, that was Tempo Storm's first match. What are your thoughts and what you've seen, all of the different changes? We didn't have any roster swap for Tempo. They were the only team to maintain their current roster, but we've even seen some changes from them too.
You know, oh man, I feel like Freedom and No Tomorrow had a better performance than maybe I thought they would, especially with having roster changes and where they found themselves placing throughout phase number 1. Gale Force, I'm excited for still. I mean, there's still obviously some criticism that I have towards the way that they're approaching the game, but I think that they have a lot of potential, and it wasn't a complete whiff. Normally, when they do make those changes, you see it instantly. You're like, this is going to struggle. But it wasn't the case so far for them, so I think there's a lot of hope there. And then tempo never changed, so I feel like it's same tempo, different phase for the most part. The biggest impressive players, or at least teams for me, was, I think, No Tomorrow and Freedom. Just a lot better play for making role swaps that soon and that young is insane.
Well, let's talk to Tempo Storm, Caterpillar, maybe Caterpillar's friend on camera now. Hey, Cattle, congratulations.
Thanks.
We've seen so many changes now in Phase 2 for North America, roster swaps on every single team except for yours. What stands out to you guys as maybe most promising now, having seen games from all the teams?
I think the most promising changes, it's probably looking like Freedom at this point. Naventic looked promising, but now that they announced that they're like role swapping again already, that's a little strange to me, but we'll see. Maybe that'll end up better. But yeah, so Freedom.
All right. Yeah, they were looking really good. It was fun to see Kier playing with them. We've talked a lot about what kind of form you guys would come into now after the midseason brawl. What are you guys' thoughts now on how you guys performed at the midseason brawl? And we noticed that Fury was playing the role that you had been playing. Are you guys continuing to make some adjustments after the MSB?
I think overall we did okay at midseason. Obviously we should have done better, and I think we could have done better. We showed in a lot of games. Like, we had leads in games that we shouldn't have lost, but we threw a lot of times, so we just have to clean up our late game and overall be more aggressive. So yeah, today we tried out me on main tank and Fury on the off tank. Just kind of something we're playing around with, because I used to be a tank main. So we'll see if we stick with that or not, but not sure yet.
Okay, cool. Dred?
I mean, for me, it's just we've been asking a lot of the teams of just what is the next week and steps forward for changes for you guys. But it's a little bit weirder since you guys hadn't made those roster changes. So it's mainly kind of going on that response to the last question with you guys swapping out. So you view that as more of like, that's more of like, because you're going against Even in Death, it's worth the tryout? Or is this maybe going to be a stable thing? Or is there even more weirder options coming out from you guys in the future?
It's definitely something we were comfortable trying within short time, because our first match was on the easier side. It is something we are seriously considering. Not quite sure yet. We've only been playing it for like a day or two, basically, so just haven't had enough time yet to settle on if we want to do it. Just mainly it'll be whether or not shot calling feels better overall team-wise with me on main tank.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think anything's getting too crazy unless we're swapping June to like Tyrael or something.
June, he's going to go Tiger the Tank status, man. He's going to play a little bit of everything.
Nice. All right, Cattle, well, you guys have a big matchup next week. You're going up against Gale Force Esports. Any thoughts you can give us about that matchup, especially now that they've shown their new roster to be pretty good?
I'd say on this patch, we would be favored, but Malthael patch coming in, who knows? Anything could happen. Malf nerfs, Malthael in the game. It's going to be wild, potentially.
All right, well, I look forward to that. Good luck and congratulations again. I'll let you give shout-outs before we let you go.
Yeah, shout-outs to my team. Shout-outs to Kala, our coach. Shout-outs to Tempo Storm. Shout-outs to all our fans. Thanks for supporting us. And shout-outs to my cat.
What's the cat's name?
This is Shadow.
Nice. All right, thank you, Cattle. Bye, Shadow.
Yeah.
Bye, Cattle.
Bye.
That does it. North America, we have seen